Chairman Kitchens and members of the Wisconsin Assembly Education Committee, I'm Nicholas Kelly. I'm the president of School Choice Wisconsin. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Assembly Bill 900. Wisconsin uses two systems to fund students in its 4 parental choice programs. In Milwaukee, effective next year, the state will pay 100% of the per pupil payment for students in the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. In contrast, the method used for other 3 programs effectively transfers financial responsibility to local property taxpayers. We believe the disparate treatment between property taxpayers in Milwaukee and those elsewhere should end. AB 900, as amended by ASA 1, would accomplish this by decoupling private school choice pupils from the school funding formula and local property taxes. If full decoupling under ASA 1 would have occurred in the current year, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau estimates the following impacts on local school districts. First, state aid would have increased by about $293 million. Second, property taxes would have declined by $220 million. Third, net revenue to local districts would have increased by $73 million. These benefits would have been experienced by 404 of the state's 421 districts. There would have been no effect in 17 districts. An additional benefit to districts and the Department of Public Instruction would result from a simplified planning and budgeting. Finally, please note that private schools in the parental choice programs would not receive any additional funding under this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to express the support from School Choice Wisconsin for ASA 1 and AB 900.
Thank you and good morning. I do not have written testimony prepared. It was my intention to allow Nick Kelly to go over kind of the top line benefits of the bill, and I want to address a couple of the questions that I have heard asked and kind of provide a little bit more context. So in Milwaukee, the legislature fixed the funding flaw back in the 2015 budget. It was a bipartisan effort. It was then Superintendent of Public Instruction, Governor Evers, had decoupling for Milwaukee in his DPI budget request. Governor Walker, Mayor Barrett, a Republican legislature, took the advice of DPI because the program was growing and was putting a lot of pressure on property taxpayers in Milwaukee. And that was something that the city and the city leaders wanted to address. So there was no public hearing about it. It was put in the budget. So now we're going back in time, debating a policy decision that was already made, and we're making it for the rest of the 3 programs, and we're actually having the opportunity to have the conversation. So I appreciate the public hearing. I think that when we understand the details of this complex policy, the first thing that I think I'm hearing when you talk to DPI or you hear from the business managers is we're recognizing there's a problem, and the problem is only going to grow. And the problem is affecting, particularly if we talk about Racine's levy being 32% based on these choice pupils, our students in the statewide program are at 220% of the federal poverty level or under. In other communities, 300% of the federal poverty level or below. That's a food share eligible family. These are the same families who are having their property taxes go up because the program is offsetting the aid reduction to the school, and they're putting it on the levy. So affordable housing, all the things that are important if you're thinking about what is good tax policy can be resolved in this bill. So for members that are here, I really encourage you, ask your school districts what they think about this, because you're going to take $350 million that stays in the school funding formula. There is no aid reduction to schools anymore. There's no tax levy. And the other thing that is happening is there's no lapse back to the state. So to answer your question, the lapse is what changes. So they used to recover this aid reduction through the local school district. So since they're not doing that, DPI is not lapsing that $300 million or so back to the general fund. That's the part that the state's going to be responsible for. But under current law, it's a GPR sum sufficient appropriation. So if the program grows, the GPR and the obligation is going to grow right along with it, regardless of if you pass this bill or not. What you're changing is how it affects the local school district and the taxpayers on the local level. So one more follow-up when we talk about when the caps go off. Only 4 school districts, we have 383 private schools and you have 402 public school districts. Only 4 local public school districts are at their cap for percent of local enrollment. So if anything, I think participation in the program is anticipated to continue to grow overall as the program grows, but there is not, we're not holding back this big tide of giant enrollment increases when the caps go off. It's a program that is just, I mean, parents have options. Open enrollment, public to public is growing. So I don't think we can effectively predict that, but I do want you to know that the caps coming off is not something I see as significant. My final point is 2023 Senate Bill 503. It was a bill, and I'm just going to point out that Representative Shelton, you're on the bill. The bill relates to state aid to the resident school district of a pupil attending a private school under the Racine or statewide parental program. This is Senator Hesselbein. This is Representative Shelton. This is a bill to decouple the choice program from school funding formula and local property taxes. It is not unlike the bill before you today. The bill before you today also does the same thing for independent charter schools, and it takes these kids out of the count, which actually is a benefit and I think more honest and true to the formula. But this bill is supported by WEAC, this SB 503. It's supported by the League of Women Voters. I encourage you to look at the policy before making your decision based on your politics, because this is really good policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Shelton?
Thank you both for being here. I have one question for you. You outlined the many benefits as you see it for this bill and moving funding for these programs to GPR. So if there's so many benefits to those schools, why not take off funding of public schools from the property taxpayers as well and do all of Wisconsin schools for GPR? Why not fully fund our schools with state money?
Not this bill.
I'm asking why we're only doing this with some schools within the school system and not all if there's so many benefits.
They are, so presently they're funded with GPR only, but there's this offsetting aid reduction and taxation.
Are you talking about public schools?
No, what's happening in the bill currently.
Yes, thank you.
But the school funding formula, I mean, Representative Chairman Kitchens, you sat on the Blue Ribbon Task Force. The school funding formula certainly, as you know, I served in the legislature. I had districts from Bigfoot to Beloit, and all of them thought that the school funding formula treated them, not as fairly as other districts.
Right, that's why I'm asking why not move all of, why not move our
doing a bill on the funding formula.
I think the answer was actually answered before, that we do have the formula is designed for a reason. And I'm not going to comment on if you wanted to go a different direction.
That has nothing to do with this bill.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just am asking the question because we are changing the way we're funding schools if we're talking about this. So I just am trying to better understand if there's so many benefits, why we're not talking about that with all schools. That's the only reason why I was asking.
I see that you put your name on this bill, and if you put your name on the bill, I think you would be at least open to this conversation, and the overall education funding conversation, I think, is just beyond the scope of this bill.
Representative Wicke.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So let's try to get, I fully appreciate what you're doing. And so let's get back to exactly what the bill does. So you work with this all the time across the state with all the different districts. So if you could answer a few questions about how this mechanically works, maybe we could kind of sort out that this is a benefit on the local districts. The fact that I dealt with this for a number of years makes it. So now, let's just say for the 23-24 school year, the children that are going to choice in the Racine program will be included in the count. Is that correct?
For this school year, they're included in the count.
For this school year. Okay. So I believe they can levy locally for that in the next school year. I think there's a year lag between the two. Is that correct?
There is a one-year delay for the count.
Okay, so what we're saying is that the funding for this actually is reimbursed a year later, okay? So the payments have to go out in the current school year because of the way that this mechanically works. So if I bring this down to its simplest case, the Racine Unified School District for this year, if we decoupled the way that we are talking about, would have the aid now. There would be no payment across and no year lag in reimbursing. So all we are doing is basically making the mechanism the same as it will work in Milwaukee under the same program. There is no change to how we're funding anything or doing anything else. This is a change to the mechanism, and the benefit is that there is not anything expended in the current year by the district, and there's not an outside levy done in the next year that has it reimbursed by the taxpayer, correct?
Correct. And the one thing that in Fiscal Bureau, I think, mentioned it, but because the same total amount is available for the general equalization aid distribution, all school districts, as was mentioned in Nick's testimony, all school districts except a handful that don't have choice in charter students, but all school districts are going to receive a greater share of state support than they are now.
So then one other thing, because you work with the choice program a lot, it is up to the individual school district to levy the full amount outside the limit for this reimbursement, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We do have a business manager coming after us.
Right, but the point I'm trying to make is if I would talk to the Fiscal Bureau, as I have in last session, that is not always true. So that would eliminate having any local school district play with the levy limit and maybe not fully reimburse themselves for what's going out for their charter programs, correct? So that would eliminate this totally.
We've heard anecdotally most do levy, but there are several who do not, and so
Well,
they
I
would
have
have
firsthand-
more resources.
I have firsthand knowledge of a district that's not now for other reasons. Thank you. And thank you for testifying today.
Thank you.
Thank you.